So the question we were just talking about a second ago, just about social issues, if you want to just tap back into that thought that you had.
Okay, so I think that there are a number of interesting social issues that the play asks us to think about, and that I've been interested in working on it and thinking about the story we're telling for an audience. And one of them is in terms of our inner relationships with those in our circle of family and friends and our professional affiliations on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis. This play highlights how, as human creatures in a late capitalist society, our behaviors and our interactions are so fundamentally based in a world that is about transactions, bargaining, business. What do I need for myself, and how can I behave with you in order to get what I need for myself, in order to be a valued, valuable, successful, and content human being. And if you take it even to the bottom line, fundamentally, I need you and money and material goods and material support in order to survive, period, in a capitalist society. And what this play does is, I think, is cut through some of perhaps the romantic ideas we have about love and compassion and selflessness, and show how challenging it is to exercise those values in a world that demands that we put food on the table, put clothes on our back, have shelter, have means, have a livelihood, and or, if we wish, to climb the so-called corporate ladder of success and achieve material wealth. Now let me put that in concrete terms. The central character, Shen Te, is selected to be representative of a good person, a good human being. That's the title. And indeed, she wants to be. And when she tries to be completely compassionate and selfless and generous and giving and kind and supportive of other individuals, purely and solely exercise that part of herself, she quickly learns that it is almost, if not entirely, impossible to survive, because everybody else then comes to her to be their beacon, their saving grace, their source of food, shelter, money. And so she is dying, she's deflating, she's collapsing into the ground, and she finds that she cannot survive. Pure goodness without some degree of self-interest, some degree of aggression, cannot survive in a material world. And I think that's interesting in terms of how we have these values and these ideals about how we may want to be and behave and become around human beings, and we have this ideal of goodness, and yet it has to be tempered, this play shows us, by some degree of self-interest. Therefore, in this play, she creates this male alter ego, and he is the one then that drives for his needs and puts other people in their place and is strict and firm and relentless and at times without compassion and self-serving. So by virtue of these two opposites, this dialectic of extreme opposites, the playwright is asking us to think about good versus evil and how they, in a sense, need one another to coexist, and one cannot exist purely without the other. I think that's really, really interesting when you present these values and ideals in their pure form, how you're forced to think about them and scrutinize them in a more complicated way. And certainly the character herself learns this. She starts out saying, I hope I'll be able to do a lot of good. And then she comes into contact with character after character who is demanding more and more of her, and she cannot survive. She's quickly sinking like this little lifeboat in the play. So it's a real interesting quandary to think about, because I think we like to think of ourselves as good and generous and compassionate human beings. I mean, certainly I do, but it makes me question then, on a personal level, you know, when do my actions have consequences? Are any actions completely selfless without danger to the destruction of one's identity and livelihood and ability to survive? So that's interesting to me.
When you are coaching the actors, when you are just doing a good scene, what is something you're constantly grounding them in?
There's a number of elements in Brecht's writing that contribute to this sense of constantly providing us, the audience, with contradictory behaviors and impulses to consider as audience members. So what I'm trying to do with the actors is continually coach them to find these contradictory impulses and actions on the part of their characters. And so from when we go from moment to moment, and these are embedded in the dialogue, a character will seem to be behaving one way for one moment, and then he or she will turn on a dime. So if it seems to be an act of generosity or kindness, then the next moment might quickly flip to a moment of cruelty or selfishness or greed. So when I coach, I'm trying to coach them into really committing fully to each of those extremes, so that the juxtaposition of those extremes highlights the inherent contradictions we have in ourselves as human beings. It's also a smaller reflection of this larger dichotomy that runs the whole play, that of the dual nature of the central character, compassionate, kind woman, and capitalist, corporate, self-centered driven man, being created by the same actor, the same individual. So those contradictory impulses, they are at the heart of Brecht's notion that as human beings we change moment to moment depending upon what our material socioeconomic circumstances are. One moment I may be able to be really kind, the next I have to look out for myself and be really cruel. So I'm looking for those moments with each of the characters and how they will switch on a dime. They'll turn on a dime, and helping the actors to accentuate those. We're also looking for their sensitivity to the stage pictures or tableaus when there are groups of characters on stage, and how their body position and placement in the space helps tell a story about their status, about their attitude towards the event that's going on. And so I'm coaching them in terms of filling their whole bodies with that attitude, with that point of view. That brings me to another coaching point, which is trying to create with the actors a very conscious choice moment to moment as to what their character's point of view is about each moment going on stage. Another point of emphasis is that we're interested in trying to capture Brecht's desire that the actor be a kind of commentator on the character and the action, so that there's not every moment complete identification of the actor to the character, but there's a consciousness on the part of the actor that he is playing the character, and that he is, or she is, using this character to make a socioeconomic point of view or point. And so sometimes, to give an example, we'll work on the actor being able to step outside of that complete identification and then open up to the audience and have a kind of commentary, or project through a focus on the audience did you just see what happened? With a particular kind of critical, or satiric sometimes attitude, so that we as the audience then are thinking, oh, about that last action. And so there's a kind of two-mindedness and a dual positioning going on with the actors, insofar as one moment he or she may be completely identifying and empathizing with the character. The next moment he or she may be stepping aside, and even literally, as in Shakespeare too, having a take to the audience and saying, did you see what just happened? Did you see what that character or I just did? What do you think of that? And that's really interesting because, as actors in perhaps more naturalistic contemporary dramas or comedies, we're trained to remain within the identity of the character the entire play. And Brecht gives little hints and vehicles throughout the play to signal to those of us who are interpreting his play, oh, here you might stand outside the character. The most obvious perhaps are the songs, where a scene is taking place, and instead of, as in musical theater, the song coming out of the emotional moment of the scene and the actor staying in character and singing as the character, the actor in Brecht's approach to songs is to step outside the character and to have the songs provide a commentary, sometimes like you're zooming out with a camera, a more broad societal commentary on the issues raised by what just happened in a scene. He also does that with little poems. Especially Shente has a lot of poems. She's in a scene as the character with the other characters, and then she steps forward to the audience and speaks a little poem that poetically and succinctly provides us with a point of view about what just happened in more generalized socioeconomic terms, The poor, did you just see what these poor people without a home did? They are cruel, but how can they help it? They are poor, they don't have any money. So in that sense, she's providing a point of view that asks us to think about the socioeconomic circumstances that are making those characters behave so abominably. So we can't just write them off. Or maybe we still do write them off, but then we're forced to go, well, that's an interesting point.